So today we're going to focus on the American dream and how it plays out in The Great Gatsby. From the first chapter, we know three things about our narrator, Nick Carraway. First, Nick grew up in the Midwest, then moved to New York's West Egg, and then something happened that made him move back to the Midwest. Two, he is prone to the use of highfalutin language, as when he introduces Jay Gatsby by saying, quote, Gatsby turned out alright in the end. It was what preyed on Gatsby, what foul dusk floated in the wake of his dreams that temporarily closed out my interest in the abortive sorrows and short-winded elations of men. That dream, by the way, with all of its foul dust, is the American dream. And finally, Nick is rich, and he got rich not by working, but by having a rich ancestor who paid someone off to serve in the Civil War on his behalf, which allowed Nick's ancestors to spend the Civil War making money. So how's that for equal opportunity? And then there's Gatsby, about whom we learn absolutely nothing about in chapter 1, except for the foul dusk floating in the wake of dreams crap, and that he had an extraordinary gift for hope. This extraordinary gift for hope is the essential fact of Gatsby, and also many romantic leads from Romeo to Edward Cullen to Henry VIII, who might have given up on several of his wives, but never gave up on the idea of love. Of all these people, they share one creepy belief that if they just get the thing they want, the thing being a female human being, then they'll finally be happy. We have a word for this. It's called objectification. Then you have the aggressively vapid Daisy Buchanan, Nick's distant cousin who lives across the bay from Gatsby and Nick in the much more fashionable East End. Daisy Buchanan is crazy rich, like polo pony rich, thanks to her marriage to Tom Buchanan. Tom is a former football player and a lifelong asshat who Nick describes as one of those men who achieves such an acute limited excellence at 21 that everything afterwards savors an anticlimax. Listen, if you're under 21, it might be difficult to apprehend the depth of that diss. That's a pretty bad diss. Soon after the novel begins, Daisy and Tom ask Nick to come over for dinner, where the golfer Jordan Baker is also there, and they have this awful party. And there's this great moment when Tom goes on a racist rant and says, quote, we're Nordics and we've produced all the things that make a civilization. Which is ridiculous because none of these people have actually produced anything. They didn't make the fancy furniture they're sitting on. They didn't grow or cook the food they're eating. They didn't even light their own freaking candles. Anyway, we also learn that Tom has a mistress and that Daisy might not be as stupid as she's letting on, because she looks at her young daughter and famously says, I hope she'll be a fool. That's the best thing a girl can be in this world, a beautiful little fool. Now look, it's difficult to argue that Daisy's a good person. After all, in the novel's climax, she allows Gatsby to take the fall for something she did. But she's a product of a much older American system, one that, for instance, allows rich people to pay poor people to fight in the Civil War for them. The amazing thing about The Great Gatsby is that Fitzgerald didn't know the Great Depression was coming, but his book sure reads like prophecy. From the dinner party, it is clear that wealth consumes the rich, but there's also a moment where it becomes clear that wealth consumes the poor. Daisy tells a story about her butler that he used to polish silver for a big family in the city night and day until the caustic silver polish ruined his nose. So whenever Nick is hanging out with the mega rich Tom, the parties are always awful and everyone always wants that kind of status and wealth that Tom Buchanan has. Which is hilarious because, of course, Tom is a horrible asshat who makes Paris Hilton look like hilarious and charming and grounded. But then we get to go onto some of the awesome parties at Gatsby's house on West Egg. And even though Gatsby has an annoying habit of saying old sport all the time and trying to sound super upper crusty, he's totally charming. He has, quote, a smile that makes you feel he is irresistibly prejudiced in your favor, to quote Nick. The first party at Gatsby's house also contains, despite being set during the Prohibition, the greatest drunk driving scene in the history of American literature, in which a guy gets in an accident like literally 3 seconds after getting into the car. Even though the wheel has fallen off the car, he keeps trying to drive it. To Fitzgerald, that had become the American dream in the 1920s. Everyone wanted enough money to buy fancy cars and enough whiskey to crash them. But Gatsby, tellingly, doesn't drink. He's never even used his pool, well, until the very end of the novel. And the money he's acquired and all the parties he throws are about one thing and one thing only: winning back Daisy Buchanan. There's a flashback in the novel to Gatsby's first meeting with Daisy, and when you hear Gatsby tell a story, it's very telling that it's hard to understand whether Gatsby is falling for Daisy or for her mansion. But when they finally reunite years later and Gatsby has a mansion of his own, everything is yellow. Gatsby's car is yellow, his tie, the buttons on Daisy's dress. At one point, Nick, who's third wheeling it fat in this scene, describes some of the flowers as smelling like pale gold. What does that even mean? So the most famous color symbol in The Great Gatsby is the green light at the end of Daisy's dock that Gatsby is always looking out at from across the bay. Gatsby just wants to reach across the bay and get to that green light, and if he can, he believes that he will have the girl and the life that has driven his wild ambition. Nick calls the green light at one point an enchanted object. And that's what the symbol really is for both literature and real life. So yes, the green light is a symbol in Gatsby, but this isn't only stuff that happens in novels. We all have enchanted objects in our lives. So just as the green light is an enchanted object, gold and yellow are enchanted colors in Gatsby and also, for the record, in real life. I mean, think of golden opportunities, golden ages, or your golden youth, or the golden arches. Gold is the color that conflates wealth and beauty. While in our culture that yellow or of gold is seen as telling us that wealth is beauty and beauty is wealth, the last chapter of The Great Gatsby is one of the saddest passages in American literature, showing how difficult it is to distinguish between guilt and innocence, and how intractably unfair society is. Even if we don't have barons or duchess. I mean, some people argue that Gatsby couldn't live in the American dream because he didn't come by his money honestly. But who in the novel did come by that money honestly? You can argue that Gatsby fails because nothing is ever enough. It's not enough for Daisy to love him. She must also say she never loved Tom. But this is America, man. When was enough ever enough for us? I mean, we invented the stretch limo. We invented the Hummer. And then we invented the Hummer stretch limo. We just keep making things. Nothing's ever enough for us. We all believe, as Nick says at the end of the novel, that if we can only run faster, stretch out our arms farther, then one fine morning. We've come to believe in this American dream, not just in the United States, but throughout the world. We understand that much will be lost in the pursuit of this dream, not just the butler's nose, but the vast valleys of ashes will pile up outside of our cities as we consume ever more stuff. We know this is unsustainable. We know that the parties can't last forever, and that we won't be able to drive home in our three-wheeled cars, but we still press on.